Here we'll look at square root addition. So our problem looks like this. Simplify negative 3 radical 50 minus radical 18. So how do we go about doing this? Well, step 1. You've got to simplify all radicals. So that's the first step. So we've got two little mini problems, okay? So we've got this one and then this one. So radical 50, we ask ourselves, is there a perfect square that goes into 50? The answer is yes. So we can do this. It's 25. So that's the same thing as negative 3 times the radical 25 times the radical 2. And we know that radical 25 simplifies to be 5. Negative 3 times 5 is a negative 15. So we get negative 15 radical 2. Okay, now we've got the radical 18. Is there a perfect square that goes into 18? Yes, there is. It's 9. So we can say that's the square root of 9 times the square root of 2. Square root of 9 simplifies. That's 3 radical 2. So now what we have is this problem becomes negative 15 radical 2 minus 3 radical 2. Now notice we have kind of like terms. So if we think of radicals, we think about them sort of like variables in that we have to have like terms to add or subtract. So another example would be if we had 3x plus 9x. Well, we see that those x's are alike, so those can add. But if we had 3x plus 9y, those do not match. So we couldn't simplify this. Alright, so the point is, once we simplify these radicals, we notice that we have some like terms that we can combine. So this just becomes negative 15 minus 3 times radical 2. Because they go together, it's just like we just add or subtract, in this case, the coefficients. So that's step 2. Step 2, combine like terms. And we'll do that here. We can say, remember, negative 15 radical 2 minus 3 radical 2. Remember our bump, 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 bump. So we have negative 18. Whoops, I wrote radical 3. That's radical 2. There we go. Negative 18 radical 2 is our final answer. Okay, some more examples. Here's another. Let's check it out. This one says to simplify negative square root of 98 minus 2 square root of 32. So, following our step 1, we want to simplify negative square root of 98. Remember, that's the same thing as a negative 1, secret invisible 1 there. We could break that down into the square root of 36 times the square root of 3, right? And so that becomes negative 6 radical 3. Then we break down the negative 2 radical 32. And again, negative 2 times the square root of 16 times the square root of 2. Square root of 16 is 4 times the negative 2. That makes negative 8 radical 2. Then we can put those together. So we've got negative 6 radical 3 minus 8 radical 2. Next step, we combine like terms. We don't see any like terms. Radical 3 and radical 2 do not match. So this problem is done just like it is. So in this case, it doesn't come out to be just a single term, and that's fine. Okay, one last example. Here we go. Negative square root of 50. we can rewrite as the negative square root of 25 times 2, which is negative 5, times radical 2. Negative 2 radical 18, that's the same thing as negative 2 times radical 9 times radical 2, which is negative 6 radical 2. Combining these together, negative 5 radical 2 minus 6 radical 2, those are like terms, and remember, we can do our bump bump. That gives us negative 11 radical 2.